After staring at the message for several minutes, Olivia finally placed the call, and Theodore answered almost immediately despite the late hour, his voice carrying the calm authority of a man who had spent decades building an empire from nothing. When she explained the circumstances surrounding her termination, the silence on the other end lasted so long that she briefly wondered whether the connection had failed before he finally said, "They dismissed the one person I trusted to protect this partnership." Theodore listened carefully as Olivia outlined the situation, asking only a few precise questions before concluding that the leadership turmoil inside Blackstone Meridian posed a serious threat to the acquisition. By the end of the conversation, he invited her to breakfast the following morning at a private club downtown and hinted that he had a proposal far more interesting than any severance package her former employer could offer. When Olivia arrived the next day, Theodore greeted her warmly and wasted no time discussing business, placing a thick folder on the table between them. Inside was an executive contract offering her a senior leadership position within his expanding investment group, complete with greater authority, better compensation, and the opportunity to oversee future acquisitions from the buyer's side rather than the seller's. Theodore explained that he had already lost confidence in Blackstone Meridian's leadership and no longer believed they possessed the judgment necessary to complete such a sensitive transaction successfully. Olivia accepted the offer after careful consideration, realizing that the opportunity represented not only professional advancement but also freedom from an organization that had failed to value her years of dedication and expertise. Meanwhile, panic spread rapidly through Blackstone Meridian as investors demanded answers, partners requested reassurances, and internal departments struggled to untangle responsibilities that Olivia had quietly managed for years without recognition. Vanessa found herself trapped at the center of the crisis, discovering that authority granted by family connections could not compensate for the absence of practical experience when millions of dollars in corporate reputations were at stake. 3 days later, a final emergency meeting was arranged in an attempt to rescue the collapsing acquisition, and every senior executive was instructed to attend. When Theodore entered the boardroom accompanied by Olivia, the room fell silent because many of the people present had assumed she would eventually return to help repair the damage rather than stand beside the other side of the negotiating table. The company's leadership immediately began offering promotions, bonuses, and public apologies, hoping to persuade Olivia to come back and restore confidence among investors and stakeholders. She listened respectfully before explaining that trust, once broken, could not simply be purchased with compensation packages and titles, especially after years of loyalty had been discarded so casually. Theodore then informed the board that the original acquisition proposal was no longer available because the risks associated with their unstable leadership had dramatically changed the value of the transaction. As the executives absorbed the consequences of their decisions, Olivia realized she felt neither anger nor satisfaction, only a quiet sense of closure that comes when someone finally recognizes their worth and chooses not to settle for less. Several months later, Olivia stood in her new office overlooking a different skyline, leading projects that challenged and inspired her while surrounded by colleagues who respected both her experience and judgment. Looking back, she understood that losing her old position had ultimately opened the door to a far better future, proving that sometimes the greatest victories arrive disguised as setbacks, and that true success comes from knowing your value even when others fail to see it. A year after the failed acquisition, financial magazines frequently cited Blackstone Meridian as a cautionary example of how poor leadership decisions could destroy years of progress in a matter of days. Business schools analyzed the incident in case studies, not because of the money that was lost, but because it demonstrated how organizations often underestimate the value of experience, trust, and relationships that cannot be measured on a spreadsheet. Olivia rarely thought about her former employer anymore because her new responsibilities kept her focused on the future rather than the past. Under Theodore's mentorship, she helped negotiate several major acquisitions, earning a reputation as one of the most effective strategic leaders in the industry and proving that her success had never depended on a particular company name attached to her business card. One afternoon, while preparing for an international conference, Olivia received an unexpected email from Rachel, her former assistant. The message explained that many talented employees had left Blackstone Meridian following the leadership crisis and that several of them had found opportunities elsewhere after realizing they deserved better treatment and greater respect. The email also contained a surprising piece of news regarding Vanessa. After months of investigations, internal disputes, and declining performance metrics, she had quietly resigned from the company and disappeared from public corporate circles, leaving behind a reputation that would take years to repair. Olivia read the message thoughtfully before closing her laptop and looking out at the city below. She felt no desire for revenge because time had already delivered the lesson more effectively than she ever could have, and everyone involved had been forced to live with the consequences of their choices. Later that week, Theodore invited Olivia to attend a celebration marking the successful completion of another major transaction. During the event, he raised a glass and publicly credited her leadership for helping transform the company's growth strategy, earning a standing ovation from executives, investors, and partners who genuinely respected her contributions. As the applause filled the room, Olivia remembered the days she had walked out of her old office carrying a single bag and an uncertain future. At the time it had felt like the end of everything she had worked for, yet now she understood that it had actually been the beginning of something far greater than she could have imagined. That evening, as the city lights reflected against the windows of the ballroom, Olivia allowed herself a quiet smile. Success, she realized, was not about proving people wrong, it was about continuing forward with confidence until their opinions no longer mattered. Months turned into years, and the story of Olivia's departure slowly evolved into corporate legend among professionals who worked in finance, acquisitions, and executive leadership. New employees joining Theodore's organization often heard fragments of the story during training sessions, but few understood the full extent of how one impulsive decision had reshaped the futures of dozens of people across multiple companies. Olivia's office became known as a place where talent mattered more than titles and where ideas were judged by their merit rather than by the status of the person presenting them. Employees appreciated her leadership because she remembered what it felt like to be overlooked, and she made certain that no capable person on her team experienced the same frustration she had once endured. One morning, while reviewing proposals for a major international expansion project, Olivia received a request to speak at a leadership summit attended by executives from around the world. The organizers wanted her to discuss organizational culture, crisis management, and the importance of retaining institutional knowledge, topics she now understood better than most people in the industry. During her presentation, she shared stories about teamwork, trust, and professional growth without mentioning her former employer by name. The audience listened carefully as she explained that businesses often spend enormous amounts of money acquiring technology, assets, and market share while forgetting that their most valuable resource is the experience carried inside the minds of dedicated employees. Her remarks received widespread attention, and recordings of the speech circulated across professional networks for weeks afterward. Many viewers praised her ability to transform a painful experience into practical lessons that could help organizations avoid similar mistakes in the future. Not long after the conference, Olivia learned that Blackstone Meridian had finally been acquired by a larger competitor at a valuation significantly lower than what had once been possible. The company survived, but it never regained the influence, reputation, or market position it had enjoyed before the leadership crisis that changed everything. The news barely affected Olivia because she had long since moved on from that chapter of her life. She wished no harm to the people still working there and hoped they would eventually find leaders who valued expertise, loyalty, and professionalism rather than appearances and office politics. One evening, Theodore joined Olivia on the balcony outside company headquarters after the successful completion of another major transaction. Looking out across the city skyline, he smiled and said, "You know, the best investments are rarely the ones everyone notices immediately. Sometimes the greatest value is hidden where others fail to look." Olivia laughed softly because she understood exactly what he meant. Years earlier, one organization had dismissed her value without understanding what she truly contributed, while another had recognized her potential and trusted her to help build something extraordinary. As the sun disappeared below the horizon and the city lights began to glow, Olivia felt a deep sense of gratitude for every challenge she had faced along the way. The setbacks, disappointments, and difficult decisions had all led her to a place where she was respected, fulfilled, and free to shape her future on her own terms. And so the story that began with an unfair dismissal ended with a lesson far more valuable than revenge. True success is not found in watching others fail, it is found in continuing to grow, thrive, and succeed long after others have underestimated what you are capable of achieving. Please subscribe to our channel and share this video with your friends and family. We create entertaining and inspiring stories for our viewers, and your support helps us continue making great content for you.